What do you do in your own words, and why do you do it?
Yeah, I mean, everything that I do is really about maximizing potential and performance, but also having a good time while you do it. I think that's the best way. And it really comes back to my own way of working and scratching my own itch. If I have to get something done, often if I try to do it like the traditional way of like staring at a screen and sitting down and putting time to it, often things don't really break through for me. Often I get the best ideas and have execution when I make it fun for myself. I put myself in an environment which creates that, or I collaborate with people because they keep me honest as well. And that's interesting as a solopreneur. And I mean, like I said before, when writing the book, it was all about speed. So I guess for me, it's and this book and my whole philosophy around work is how can we maximize the best of the moments that we have together, because life is so short.
Boom. Enough said there. 100%, Leanne. Can I ask you what kind of projects are keeping you busy at the moment, or what kind of projects you have upcoming?
Yeah. And so when you ask me what do I do, it's hard to define because as I'll explain some of the projects, they're actually really quite varied.
Yeah.
So more recently, actually, this is really quite fun. So my background is actually in marketing. And I haven't used that. I mean, I use that side of my brain for marketing stuff that I do, but never in a corporate setting. And I was brought in, I really recently collaborated with a fellow consultant on a rebranding project. And it was incredible to do that, just to get back into that mindset of what does it take to actually, create conversations and make a brand stand out. But also running, like building connections within teams, culture work, much like you, Prina, and also change. And I think, I mean, workshops really, it's all about change and transformation. I see a workshop as like one part of an intervention. So yeah, running a lot of different sessions. I've got one coming up, which is called the Trust Trap. And it's one that I've never done before publicly, but I've been thinking about this concept of bringing yourself to work and how truthful is that? Do we really want people to be themselves at work? So just, unpacking that. So lots of fun projects. That's why I decided to be a solopreneur, so that I'm not sort of, well, I don't have to focus in on one thing, which is counterintuitive to a lot of business advice.
I hear you. Exactly the same. It's the variety and just the excitement of all of the different things. Now, Leanne, your book, 2 Hour Workshop Blueprint, what inspired you to write it?
Inspired me really from an itch from people. So I've done 200 podcast episodes, but I've never done a podcast. And I think it's really difficult to do a podcast which covers like what is the end-to-end process of designing a workshop and making it so that you kind of reduce the overthinking, reduce the overwhelm. You can follow a clear path.
Yeah.
There's a lot of philosophies I talk about in my podcast, but none of them have been articulated in a way. And I thought a book is like, it's like a one-stop shop for the information that you have. So
Yes.
again, like a lot of people saying, hey, how do I run a workshop? So this is it. And a lot of the workshops that people are asking me about, but they're not asking about how do I run a 2-day conference. They're asking about, hey, I've been asked to present this concept. So it's really helping more so experts, content experts, subject matter experts turn what they've already got inside their head into an engaging workshop experience in hopefully the simplest way, but also, keeping it practical.
That's so cool. And Leanne, so I've been an early reader of your book and, tested out the blueprint itself many a time, by the way. And the blueprint, so while it is called a 2 Hour Workshop Blueprint, I myself have used it for a whole day workshop. But I've used it in the sense of chunking the 2 hours, times 3.
I love that. Yeah,
Uh, and that
that's
really works.
cool. Good to know.
Not just for 2 hours, by the way. You can extend it if you wish. If you are reading the book and you want to apply the learning, I highly recommend that. You'll get so much from it. So, Leanne, you've written this book, and no doubt you have attended many a workshop by others. And, in your corporate days as well, back in the day when you were not a facilitator, you've probably sat in on a number of training sessions also. I want to ask you, what are some common mistakes that workshop facilitators make that lead to boring workshops?
Oh, I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well. I mean,
Yep.
I think that, and all of these are mistakes that I made. And then
Mhm.
basically, maybe the book is written for like a younger version of Leanne. So the first thing would be focus on the endless focus on content and information, because I thought information equals value and I want to be valuable when I'm up there and putting a lot of pressure on myself. And I think that is a mistake. So rather than, this is the thing, we are in an information age.
Yeah.
I mean, if you Google leadership, if you Google culture, like how to build a culture,
It's
it's
overwhelming,
millions.
the information that we get.
Yeah. So really it's about cutting out a lot of the information and giving people a clear result and driving them to that result. So the problem I made was that someone asked me to do a workshop, I'd hop onto Google, I'd search for it, I'd cut and paste all the information into a PowerPoint, I'd rearrange a PowerPoint, add some funny memes and videos, and there we go. That was my process. But now what I talk about is actually thinking about the question and the result and what is most useful for the group, and designing for that experience as well, and cutting out a lot of content and leaving space for connection and conversation. So it's really not about me, the expert. It's about, we're all trying to tackle this concept. How can we leverage each other and the brains in the group to do that? So that's been, I guess, a bigger shift from first-time facilitator to where I am now. I think, and that leads to sort of over-design. And I don't know if you did this in your younger years, but my agendas were like, if the workshop started at 11, it'd be 11:01, do this, 11:03, like
detail.
And like no space for, and of course, like things happen in workshops, conversations, a question might inspire, and so being a bit loose.
Yes.
As well. Did you find that?
Absolutely so. But that's so anti anything that, the people in the HR profession or learning and development profession work on, because we like control. There's this big element of control, and time equals control, managing time and having a wonderful running sheet, Leanne. The other thing I found, and, over my career as well, and talking to past Prina, like, no, past Prina, I've got many no's for her. Common mistakes. A lot of my government clients, I will say, and so a lot of private organizations as well, when people deliver training, they feel like they have to prove it with, here's a proven study, here's a case study, here's that, here's this, so you're proving your worth as a facilitator. Yes, absolutely valid in some cases, but sometimes I think we can overdo it by relying on content from external sources rather than creating that conversation and experience, as you said. So I love the fact that you said that you designed for experience. So every single workshop based on your blueprint will be designed for experience. It won't be like a copy and paste model. It will be tailored to the situation. And that's how I've been using it, Leanne. And a space for connection and conversation. Because the other thing also, the mistake that many facilitators make is that they pitch themselves as the expert in the room. And that's so wrong. When I'm delivering workshops, absolutely, I'll know my content, I'll know my stuff. However, there's people in the room with brains who've been through so much more, lived experience, whatever else. So we try to garner their information. So current Prina has evolved to use the participants as well. So making it interactive and engaging. Yeah. One of the feedback I actually got on one of my workshops was that it was too interactive. But I think that's a good thing. That is a good thing.
That's super interesting. Did you unpack that? Did you find out more?
Okay. Yep. It was a workshop on culture change and addressing toxic workplace behaviors, and too interactive in the sense that I think some people didn't want to speak about the issues at hand. So interesting learning there. Yeah.
I reckon I could be accused of that as well sometimes, because the other element is, oh gosh, there's so much we could unpack from what you said, but I talk about, including contrast and a shift in energy through different mediums and activities. And sometimes, again, past Leanne, hopefully I don't do it as much now, but I still fall in the trap of wanting to make it so good that I will put too much contrast in, and it's a bit like a roller coaster. So there's no time to really settle in and provide space. I think that speaks to maybe my mode of working, which my personal way of preference is like speedy, fast, contain it, move on. That is not the general population. Like some people might share that, others might need more time to digest content, or their expectation is that they're to sort of listen as opposed to participate. So expectations are important. We can talk about that later. But the other part I want to pick up on what you said before was that imposter monster that comes when we deliver a workshop and thinking, I've got to quote HBR and what David Rock does, and like bringing in all these models. And something I actually talk about in the book is actually creating your own framework based on your own expertise. And you don't have to be certified or have an MBA or a PhD to create your own framework. It's just a way to help your content be more memorable. Yeah, 100%. I'm glad that you raised that.
And as a facilitator, it really gets you thinking about that content and the audience itself and the kind of conversation that it will generate if you create your own framework and whatever else as well. So tried and tested, and I love that element especially. You talked about contrast and energy. And as a facilitator, energy is a really interesting one in that we have to have high energy ourselves, even if you've had a crappy night's sleep the night before, or even if you're, doing an online presentation in the middle of whenever for America or whatever.
Yeah.
But then the energy of the room as well. So you have to be really present as a facilitator, Leanne, I imagine, to be able to read and sense and gauge that constant energy level of the group that you're facilitating.
Yeah, and you're right. And I think I think the energy absolutely depends on the fact, like the group, the content. I was working with a group, actually, when I was in Thailand, I ran a webinar for a group in Australia, and they lead really tough webinars with sort of broken families. And so for them, the energy that they create is not high energy, but it's calm energy in terms of, but also focused and interested and present. I think that's what you're referring to, is like that, just having that grounded presence to be able to create that space. So yeah, it is. And it's all about, you're right, like I have to run presentations sometimes like in the evening or very early on, and I've got to be excited about it. Most of my sessions are high energy. They're about positive type of topics, not what my clients were going through the other week. And you've really got to get yourself excited about delivering it, because if you're not excited about the topic, it will not translate, particularly over a virtual call.
Yeah.
And I do see, I mean, I don't know if you see in corporate, you've got subject matter experts, and when they talk with passion, it just comes to life. When you have other people that are like been forced to run that presentation, you can tell.
Absolutely. So another question for you, Leanne. How important is it to engage workshop participants from the outset? And what are some effective ways to do so? And I'm asking this especially because of, that feedback that I got, that it was too interactive. I have ideas now, but your thoughts?
Cool. Well, love to hear your ideas. I think this is about setting expectations.
And to engage with participants beforehand.
Yes. Yeah, that's that. And so something I talk about in the book is called the power up stage. I've got the SPARK framework. P stands for power up. And there's two sections, that powering up yourself, which is what we spoke to before, like getting your game face on, but powering up your participants. And you don't have to wait for the workshop to start, as you said, to let that happen. So things that I've used in the past, which like they always seem to work because they build a level of familiarity. One is like just, and I know you do this as well, like a pre-video.
Yep.
Like 90 seconds, like nothing. It's film it in front of my office. It's not fancy. Like just sharing, hey, this is what we're in for. Here are a few things. I'd love to see you with your camera on. Complete this quick question below so I can find out more about what drives your interest in this topic. And that's just, then you get that response. And then often when I get those survey responses, I call it the playback method. When we kick off the session, I'll be like, hey, here's what you said about the topic, right? And then I present my framework in response to what they've said. So you can tell you're listening to them as opposed to trying to assume what they're after.
Perfect.
Yeah. Is that what kind of things? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, exactly. So the video introduction, sometimes, you have a podcast, I have a podcast. Sometimes I'll send, relevant podcasts as well on the topic material, which is really handy because it just sparks ideas or gets people thinking about my style and what I might bring to the facilitation session and the kind of questions I can ask and how they can be within the session as well. Because, once you get to know someone and their manner, it's just so much easier it's about building rapport. That's what I'm talking to, really.
Yes. And even just a big smile, like when people arrive onto the Zoom call, and I've seen some people like they have a waiting room open, and when let's say their session starts at 10 a.m. and I'm talking virtual here. Yeah. They'll switch on the camera and they'll begin, as opposed to there's an opportunity like the 5 or 10 minutes before to start.
And that's exactly what you do. So I've been on many a course by Leanne. I remember Virtually Possible and Booked Out Facilitator, amazing courses that Leanne runs for corporate people as well as entrepreneurs. So there's a mix of stuff that Leanne does. And each time you hold our virtual gatherings, you open the room 10 minutes earlier. And I just love those conversations. So we slowly warm into the session, don't we?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's the same when you have people that come into your room, it's not like you ignore them and then you go, right, we're starting now because it's like top of the hour. You're having a coffee, you're relaxing in, like you're making them feel welcome. So yeah, all of those things are crucial when it comes to like, how do you get the engagement early?
100%. And so just a point to note there. So your 2-hour workshop blueprint book is applicable to face-to-face workshops as well as virtual, which I have applied also. So it's double use, which is excellent. And talking about virtual, Leanne, you are tech queen, you know, like in my world. So what role does technology play in creating more dynamic and engaging workshops? We're talking virtual here.
Yeah.
Or hybrid.
Yeah, I have a if technology and I were in a relationship, it would be it's
Go
it's
on.
interesting. What's the word that they use on Facebook? It's complicated. We have a complicated relationship because when when webinars start, I'm like, oh, I have to get it's all about the tech and like using the sound effects and bringing things in. But what I realized is that it was maybe a crutch for, you can really be effective without technology.
Yeah.
I do have a Zoom producer because what I struggle with personally on big webinars and calls is that I context switching. Like I want to be fully present, I want to read chat, but then I also have to figure out, oh, I've got to press this button. That really kind of confuses me. So I learn, what my weaknesses are and then bring in help to compensate. But and this applies to both sessions, like even in face-to-face, I try to only add technology where I feel like I can't do it without technology. Like there's no way I can present this. And you and I have been in a session like with Alan Weiss where he can captivate a room for 2 days and he has like 2 flip charts. There's no
Yes. Yeah.
Yep. And I feel like I think we can sometimes rely on tech going, okay, if I use this cool video or animation, it'll make the workshop better. But does it? So asking that question.
Yeah.
But I did run a conference in Malaysia, and on the first day we didn't use any interactive technology, and it was really hard to get interaction from the group. It was a big group, over 100 people.
Yeah.
It was very formal, like in a ballroom, classroom style. I had no control over the environment. Second day, I'm like, let's bring in Slido. Let's see what happens. And this is an anonymous polling tool. And it was incredible, actually, the interaction. So that was when a situation where we really needed the tech to get the engagement, get some feedback.
And those kind of tools are really good for when we are trying to create psychological safety. And, as a facilitator, it's all about creating the right environment for our participants to be able to contribute. Those kind of tools really do help as well, don't they? So that you're talking from an online perspective. And then, in person, there could be different voting mechanisms and all sorts. So you can get as creative as you want. And I know that your book has lots of ideas within it as well in relation to that. Leanne, another question for you. How important is it to have a clear purpose and a desired outcome for a workshop? And how can facilitators ensure that participants are aligned with these goals?
Oh, that's an amazing question. So purpose is everything. I mean, the why, Simon Sinek, we kind of all know this, but the purpose really serves for me as the criteria. We talked before around content overwhelm. And so once you have purpose is your North Star. It's the destination you want to get to. And I use that as my criteria for, are these activities, are these conversations that I'm planning leading us there? Or are we going like another route that's a detour? And in the concept of a short, punchy workshop, and mainly a lot of people are just super time poor and don't want maybe the detour.
Yeah.
That is my criteria for, is it leading me in the direction of what this result is? So I think the purpose for me, something I write about is creating like a workshop mini mission statement where you actually go, this workshop is for this group of people who need to know this so that the result.
Yeah.
And the other thing to keep in mind is that the workshop may be one method to get the result, but it may not be everything. And I know, Prina, you do speaking, you do coaching, right? So all of those are supplementary things, advising that can help get to the result. The workshop is a part, but it's not the be all and end all. Like I think we try to stamp out unconscious bias in a 2-hour workshop. It's not going to happen.
No way. It is not the fix. Yes.
It's not the fix. And in terms of the second part of the question, which I find fascinating, how do we know that participants are aligned?
Yeah.
That's so interesting because often it's a client, someone that represents participants who will talk to us, and they give us an indication of what they think the group might need. So actually I set off a speaking agreement to a client yesterday, and in the offer I wrote, here are some things that I'll include for free. And one of them was I'll interview 3 participants, a cross section of people that will be coming along to this webinar. So, and that's probably the reason how I can validate the purpose.
Yes.
Is to do that. Yeah. Actually, one more thing on that.
Please.
I was running a big conference a couple of weeks ago, and I wanted to do some cool things with that, but I needed employees to be part of it. And so I asked the client to ask a few employees to be part of it. And then she was getting like a round of these declines. And I'm like, what's going on here? Because I worked with this client before, and I'm like, I know that their team, great culture, passionate people. And I said, look, I'm sensing that your people are really busy here. Like
Yeah.
maybe they're stressed, like, because I'm a bit confused why this is happening. So
Yeah.
that was an indicator. And she said, yeah, you're actually on the money. And so that really helped me inform my design on the day. And I actually brought in a really quick segment around doing things and being somewhere.
Aha.
And I wouldn't have had that. And actually, when I ran the panel at the end of the day, everyone's like, that was the number one thing. It's just that highlight of being versus doing. Wouldn't have got there if I hadn't picked up on the signal beforehand. So
That's a
yeah.
brilliant point. So as facilitators, so here we're talking to external facilitators or even internal facilitators. Often a workshop is a pain in the bum for someone who is so busy during the day that they are going to be your biggest resistor initially. So hence the question of how we engage with audience beforehand. So that's one element. The other thing is as well, some of the workshops, no doubt, that you run and some of the workshops that I run are mandatory. When they're mandatory, so volunteer and voluntold are two different things, and that's your lingo, I know. So people who are voluntold, you have to attend this workshop, are going to hate whoever's, told them to attend. But then on the day itself as well, there's just this big, you can see it from people, you can see it from participants that they're just not present and there. How do you address that, Leanne? So you're in a workshop, you've got, I'm so busy.
I address it immediately.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know. Like I'd even start from a place of like empathy. And honestly, I've been there as well. Like, and I would say, look, I've been there. Like I'm so busy. My calendar looks like this. And I might put up like a picture of calendar Tetris, which I joke about. Now you're all playing calendar Tetris and now you got this. Like, this is the worst. Like, but so I would actually build the objection up front. And I always do it, especially if it's obvious. Like when I was working, my first gig out of leaving corporate was running leadership workshops all around Asia. And these are busy construction managers. I've never worked on a construction site. I've worked in mining sites, not construction. Plus, like was relatively young compared to who was in the audience, and I'm female, and the group were mainly 95% male in another country. And so what I'm thinking is like, what are they thinking? They're thinking, who the heck is this young upstart from Australia teaching us about leadership?
Yep.
I just brought that up right at the beginning.
Yeah. Call it.
Yeah, called it. And you can see it. Like everything just, I called it. So it all diminishes. There's no calling the objection up front, but then, framing it in a way saying, look, I'm here to start conversations. You're the experts in construction. You're the experts in your own company culture. Back to what you said before, Prina. And, I'm here to provoke conversation using processes and models and things like that to build your leadership capability on site. So going back to the purpose.
Perfect. And it just dissolves once you address those objections. I do that as well. Like, why are we all here? How are we feeling? Are we stressed? How many emails are we receiving today? And I've got a funny gift that I start with as well. Just to, a bit of humor is always good. But from a time perspective, it's really important to have the right people in the workshop present. And, it's often giving permission to switch off from your daily business as usual activities as well and enjoy your day, enjoy your time out. Little bit of a holiday from your everyday to-dos, ideally.
Well, I know you talk about the balcony, the basement, the dance
balcony.
floor, balcony. There we go.
Yeah.
One of the fun activities is like everyone grab your phone and close all the apps that you have and count how many apps you've got open.
Whoa.
I closed like 45 apps the other day. I was like, oh my goodness. And it's just kind of like, who is the most, so you can kick off with that, but it's a nice way to sort of check people in to like you said, and there's a bit of humor involved.
And being present. Yeah, exactly. Because their time is valuable and our time is valuable as well. It's a two-way street. So while we're talking about, activities and energy levels. So what are some ways to keep energy levels high through the workshop, particularly during long sessions?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's so much as high energy, because I know that I can still be focused and attentive while I'm tired, but I'm still interested. But I think it's all about, the hardest part is like maintaining the attention and focus.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
And so something that is, if you listen to any of the podcasts, I talk about contrast. I think that's the most important thing. So contrast in terms of everyone's going to get bored. If you just stand there and have a PowerPoint and talk to that for an hour, it's boring. Like it's just monotonous because there's no scene change or contrast or something that's different that will hook me in. So moving from, perhaps start with PowerPoint, then you might move to a flip chart, then a group activity, then get people standing, right? Sharing in groups, sharing in pairs. always thinking about how do you weave in an element of change across the scope of your day. And even giving permission for people to like leave the workshop room, go for a walk and talk for 15 minutes, like just get out of the space. That's a form of contrast too. Yeah.
I always, especially for the long ones, I have an energy monitor in the room. Assign someone, and they'll say, "Prina, we're tired," or whatever, the collective voice. Which is really good to have. So how can workshop facilitators create safe and inclusive environments where all participants feel comfortable sharing their ideas and opinions? This is a tough one, and one that every facilitator wants the answer to, Leanne.
I mean, there's definitely ways, but there's also inbuilt systems and ways of working that can come against us. And especially if you're an external, you may not know. But I mean, we talked about pre-work before and setting expectations. I think the environment is actually a key one. Like, how is it all set up? If you've got everyone sitting in rows facing the front, it creates a different dynamic as opposed to sitting at trestle tables or round circles, or even no tables at all. Like, there are signals of engagement. Being wary of the status of people in the room. I've had groups where, and particularly in Asia, where when the country president was in the room, no one actually spoke. And then when he left, it was like, everyone was talking. So just being mindful of like the hierarchy that's within certain cultures or contexts of an environment. And in that situation, maybe there's things that I could have done and use that as, I've actually used the status of someone in the room to be beneficial. Like when running a webinar, I had the highest status person within this government department. She joined the conversation early. So we kicked off, like we were just saying, we organically have these conversations. Other people are joining, they're seeing she's engaging and on camera, right? So that's signal to everyone else that, hey, this is how we're going to operate. So you can use that status. Also, something like a self-deprecating humor is always good. Like, my handwriting is terrible, but I think it makes me more relatable, like just to bring down my own status to get that conversation. Something I'm very bad at, Prina, is someone will ask a question. I'm like, that's a great question, but I haven't said it to the other 17 questions that were asked. So every question is a good question. I'm just going to be more mindful of that, because you know what I mean? Like, if you say, "Oh, that's a great question," and then someone else asks a question and you don't say it to them, maybe it doesn't bring that involvement. But I think, number one is like not making someone, not losing face. So if someone says something that might not be correct, or what you want to reinforce is like, how do you call that out in the right way or navigate that so it still remains safe to contribute?
Now we're leading to what I call the positional power that a facilitator has. So whether you're a yoga teacher, whether you're, a facilitator like us, or whether you are a teacher at a school, you have power first and foremost. And we are very lucky and very privileged to have that power. We can potentially even abuse it or use it to the advantage of the group. So I love the way that you use the leader in the hierarchy to actually warm up the room, as people are coming into that Zoom call. One of the things that I do, especially, workplaces are hierarchical, let's be honest. That's why I left.
Same.
Right? But it's a reality, it's a fact. The workplaces are hierarchical, and I know you do a lot of teamwork, team development kind of facilitation, and as do I. When I do that, I always have an upfront agreement with the leader of the team to say, "No, you need to take that leadership hat off and you need to be a participant within the whole group." And for the leaders who trust me enough, I won't share the slides with you even, like, please trust me, it's going to be an amazing day. I will get the outcome that you want, but just join the ride with the rest of your team with me. So you are a virgin, so to speak, as well.
That's great. And actually really good way to, the other thing I started to do on my, like, I don't know if you've got people maybe in HR that might be listening, but when HR, let's say we've got a pilot program and HR said, we're going to be observing at the back, I don't let them do that. So either you're in the room being a participant involved, or, you're not observing. Because that creates, like, the Hawthorne effect. Like, people, if you've got someone in the room that's not part of it and they're just sitting there watching, that definitely, for me, that would have an impact. Yeah. So
that's a lesson for me, actually. Yeah. Okay. Food for thought. Definitely so. Leanne, your book is very much about definitely designing a 2-hour workshop blueprint, but it's how you you curate the session, really, don't you? I love the framework that you have. After the workshop or even during the workshop, Leanne, how can you've answered this in one aspect with creating safety, but other ideas, how can workshop facilitators gather feedback from participants to continually improve their workshops and ensure that they're remaining engaging and effective, Leanne?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest mistake we make is we try to get feedback after the workshop and you've lost people. And I still I'm still not good enough with doing this during a session, particularly a webinar, is like dropping a link to feedback as we're going, because as you said, when people arrive, like they've got so much going on in their day, and when they leave, same thing. Like they've got 200 emails to catch up on and meetings. So your biggest way of getting feedback is, as you progress, is actually checking in and not trying to interpret body language, which is something I learned from Mark Bowden. So actually asking, hey, like, how's this pace going? You've got your energy monitor there. Perfect. I love that idea. I'll have to incorporate that into my work. But I think so if you do, it's like something I talk about is the review stage in your workshop. And I give it a good chunk of a 2-hour workshop. I give it about 20 minutes, 20 to 25 minutes of review. So reflection, but also, yeah, I know that surprised me actually, because I'm always running to the end, and I really want to get better at this, because I don't think we have, like, certainly in the workshops I facilitated, there's so much juice and information that it's like, but really it's the value of like, what are you going to do with this? What are you going to take with it? How do you bring it back into real life?
Yes.
But getting the feedback in the moment, because like the survey response rates once they leave are like dramatically low.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But also I've had even because I run like these webinars for entrepreneurs, like after a session I might feel like, oh, I'm not too sure if that landed. So like I'll just WhatsApp like peers like yourself, friends that I can trust, that I value your feedback, I know of your experience, and I'll just check. And I know that you and other people can be honest. So it's actually finding people that you trust to provide that. At the same time, I know Alan Weiss says you don't get be intentional with who you get your feedback from.
That too, pinch of
Yeah.
salt. Absolutely. So, but I really like that you review the workshop. You review the workshop during the workshop. So 20 minutes. This is like, whoa, for me. Really
Huge.
good, Leanne. Because I'm also mindful, and like yourself, I'm really mindful about, yeah, you're gonna, impart wonderful knowledge with people, but then I don't want it to be a one-off kind of crappy workshop that someone forgets and they go back to their day and back to their stressy job or whatever. Whatever I do, and I know whatever you do, you've got a high ethical stance as well, Leanne, which is what I love about you. It needs to be sustainable, and I want people to pass it on because it's good stuff that we're doing. We want the world to be a better place. I want the workplace to be a better place.
Yes.
So it's about creating sustainability in a curated fashion, which is the way.
And like, I know it is a lot, but carving out that time within your workshop is actually a gift, as opposed to, hey, we're giving you more homework, you got to do this. It's like, I always say it's a workshop, not a do this later shop. Like, do the work in the workshop. Do it.
Yes. Okay. Beautiful. What are some common myths about what makes a workshop successful, and how can we dispel them to create more effective learning experiences?
I think we've pulled on a few of these levers in our conversation. I think the default would be like, it's all about the content first. That's the common myth, and that's something that I've been brought up with, because that's the way you think it works. Like, it's all about the information. But I mean, sure, in the 1980s it would have been different when there wasn't the internet, but not now. And I think the other myth is that a workshop or a presentation equals PowerPoint. Like, let's break that assumption. Who said? And it's something like, oh gosh, even working with a company, they have to do like a pitch, and they said, here's our pitch deck. It's like, why is a pitch? Why is there a connection between that and a PowerPoint? Like, stop it. Let's break it. That's part of the contrast, is even like by not using PowerPoint, you're a point of difference already.
Yes.
Right. But I mean, there is value in some aspects of PowerPoint, of course, and how you use it to improve the experience, but not just, let's break that assumption then. That's a real myth.
100%. I've got some other myths, and this is me getting on my high horse now. On a high horse. So a workshop is going to fix whatever problems we have. Let's bring Leanne in. Let's bring Prina in. No, as you said earlier, there's a whole raft of other interventions we can support with. A workshop ain't going to fix nothing overnight. No way. It's a long game, isn't it? Yeah, I'll stop there, Leanne. I had something else, but I can't remember. It's gone. Um,
I'm excited to hear it when you find it.
yeah, I'll message you. Leanne, I've got one final question for you. So this podcast is called Ways to Change Your Workplace. Leanne Hughes, if I was to give you a magic wand, what is one way that you would change the way of the workplace?
Oh, I love this question. There's so many things you could do. One thing, I think in the context of what we just spoke about, I think, and back to that, a workshop is it's more than just information share. I think let's look at let's widen our vision in terms of what are the opportunities within a workshop that are available. And so I guess if I had a magic wand, it would be to promote that a workshop is all about building connections, introducing people, building your culture. You can tell what a culture is like through their meetings. I know you've identified that. It's opportunity to get feedback and to listen to your people. It's more than just an information share. So that would be my thing, particularly as we like hybrid work, remote work, is like seeing actually there's so many amazing things a workshop can do that rather than just that compartmentalized content piece.
Totally. And I've remembered what I was going to say. So the other myth is that, oh, we'll develop our leaders on a leadership development program, Leanne, and they'll be wonderful. My issue with workplaces is that, no, you haven't developed them as proper decent managers yet, and you can't just jump to leadership development. So we need practical management first.
Yes.
And then we move to theoretical leadership and all of the sexy stuff there.
Can I just add one more thing? Because you just inspired another thought that Michael Bungay-Stanier shared. It's so funny. Like when we take people to training, we put them into like, basically, they're a goldfish. They might be swimming in dirty water, right? That's their workplace culture. Then you take the goldfish out and you train them. You give them leadership development, management training, and you put them back into the dirty water. Like nothing can change.
I love that.
Isn't that great and powerful?
Totally.
Yeah.
I think we need another conversation about this because, development is so important to all employees. When I worked, I was all about development, and that's the other enticing, employee benefit, if we're talking employee value proposition from a HR perspective, we develop our people. Do you develop them well, though? To be continued, Leanne, in a potential future podcast. Amazing. Another idea there, Leanne. Thank you so much for today. Until the next time.
Thanks, Prina. I loved our chat. Chat to you soon.
My pleasure.